anywhere in gaming, I don't think there is anything that matches FIFA Ultimate Team. It's one of the most popular game modes in the world, but it's also one of the most hated. So, through this video, we are going to be exploring why Ultimate Team is the way it is these days. What are some of the funniest things that have gone wrong with it that have really amused the community and created some great YouTube content? But also, we're going to focus on some more serious things, some things that have maybe been pushed down and hushed up that you might not know about. So welcome to the deepest FIFA Ultimate Team iceberg. This of course isn't the first FIFA Iceberg video, and I don't think it will be the last, but this is going to go deeper than any of them have ever gone before. Obviously, shout out to anyone that's already done one. I'll put the links in the description of people that kind of inspired this video, but I think you're going to learn some new things. So obviously, before we start this video, some of you might not know what an iceberg is, so I've got to give you a little quick explanation. Obviously, icebergs in real life, you'll all know what they are. It's a big block of ice in the ocean. You can see a little bit of it from the surface, but obviously most of it is under the sea, and that is where the iceberg video idea comes from. The further we go on in this video, you're going to learn some newer stuff. We're going to get some stuff that not as many people know. It's a bit deeper and maybe even a little bit more sinister than what you would have heard before about FIFA Ultimate Team. So I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to get straight into this, and we're going to start with the tip of the iceberg. So, as I mentioned just a minute ago, the tip of the iceberg is, of course, conspiracies that a lot of people know about. And I don't think there's anything more known in Ultimate Team than the Packlock conspiracy theories. And there's quite a few of these, quite a few different aspects to it, but one of the most talked about ones is always the red list. So, for any of you that don't know what this conspiracy is, it's quite an easy one to get your head around. It's just the idea that EA picks some users to have better pack luck than other people. Sometimes there's a reason for it. A lot of the time, people believe that YouTubers, and especially ones that EA Game Changers, get better pack luck than the rest of the community. This is mainly because if people are watching FIFA videos on YouTube, or especially if they're watching the people that are sponsored by EA play the game, they're going to see them getting good players, and that's going to make them want to spend more money, not just on the game, but more importantly, on FIFA points and opening packs. A lot of people do agree with this theory, and I do think there could be some substance to it, especially in the past, but a lot of people do come back the other way and say they don't get better pack luck, they just spend so much money on the game that they're going to get better packs. They open so many packs, eventually they're going to pack all of the players that everyone wants. So a lot of the time, these YouTubers who are said to be on the red list might not even have packed that player themselves. It might just be someone else's footage that they're pretending is their own for views. The red list goes a lot deeper than that. Connected to it is the idea of the negative record pack luck theory, and this has definitely come to the fore in recent years, especially with share play on the PlayStation, people streaming to Discord, and just getting YouTubers to open their packs. You see a lot of people with negative pack luck getting good packs. If you're really bad at the game, you're not going to want to play it if everyone's smashing you every single time, are you? So EA help you out a little bit, give you a bit more of a chance to enjoy yourself and win by giving you better players. And of course, once you start getting those better players, you're going to start winning, but as soon as people catch up to you in the power curve, that's going to go away. So you're going to need to spend FIFA points to get yourself back in front and get some wins against other people. Whilst bad players might even be getting good rewards, they might not even be buying the packs, they might be getting it from Div Rivals or even Weekend League if they've maybe just slipped their way in. A lot of people to get even rank 1 in Weekend League, they'll maybe get a few discard price informs as their best pulls of the week, and it just doesn't seem fair. I'm not too sure on this one, but there's definitely something a bit fishy about it. So, as I said that we have the flip side of the negative record pack luck, a lot of people say there's a flip side to the red list as well, and that is the blacklist. The main people that the community believe EA might be out for are the traders, especially people like Run the Foot Market who don't just trade for themselves. They make lots of coins, they get a good team themselves, they may even be very, very good at the game. They don't just help themselves, they help other people, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's through Discord, to get more coins without spending those FIFA points. And obviously EA aren't going to appreciate that. EA want you to spend as much money as possible, so they're not going to give these people any help with their content. FIFA points are coming up quite a lot in this already, aren't they? On top of this, we have one kind of more recent addition to the red list pack luck kind of theory that has really come about since EA have been doing the 83 times 25 or the 84 times 20. Kind of these high rated cards in big quantity SBCs, whether it's through swaps or just as a repeatable SBC in the late game. And that is the untradeable pack luck / the dupe theory. So a common belief that I've got to say I do feel that is right is that untradeable packs are better. A lot of the best players I've packed, especially in the last few years, have been untradeable. Every icon I've got that hasn't been from a guaranteed pack has been untradeable. My best pulls, whether it was for me or even my friends, a lot of them have packed Golden Mbappe untradeable. I don't know anyone that's packed him tradable. I don't know anyone that's packed a lot of the high rate special cards tradable. Everyone seems to pack these cards untradeable, because then if you've got them untradeable and they're that good and you can't sell them, you're going to have to try and build a team around them, and obviously that, again, might require FIFA points. On top of this, though, we have got the dupe theory, which is that if you've already got a player in your club, whether it's tradable or especially untradeable, you're more likely to pack them again. And as I was mentioning earlier, with the high-rated, big quantity packs from SBCs, people end up getting maybe 25 duplicates out of 30 in the biggest packs we've seen in the past. It's very common to get at least 15 duplicates from the 20 or 25 player packs, and a lot of the time people don't even have that many players of the correct rating in their club. It does make it a little bit fishy, and obviously you will want to keep doing these SBCs to try and get good players, and you might need to buy packs to get players to put into these SBCs. So it all links back to REA giving you bad pack luck on purpose, or even disguising it as good pack luck with the duplicates and the untradables to try and get you to spend more money. So moving on from that, we've got one that has been around probably just as long with Ultimate Team, and that is the Icon Handicap. I haven't heard too much about this recently, but from about FIFA 13 until about FIFA 18, this was everywhere. So the main idea was if you had a whole team of legends or icons, obviously as they are called now, then the game might make them play worse. It might maybe increase the error around these players. They might not be as strong on the ball. They might miss easy shots because you've got so many legends. The game kind of wants to make it more fair on your opponent. They want to give your opponent, who might even be using back in the day like a 10k gold team or Brazilva team or whatever, they might want to give them more of an opportunity to beat you, so they make your players play worse. A lot of people do think this is true. I've got to say it might have some legs to it in my opinion, but a lot of people have argued if you're using players that are really good, sometimes you're just a little bit more careless. Sometimes you just expect them to score however much power you put on the ball or however far away from the goal you aim it, and I think that might have a little bit of substance too. Of course, let me know what you think. A lot of you would have been waiting for this one. It's impossible to make a video about FIFA and especially Ultimate Team without mentioning scripting. I'm sure basically all of you will know what this is. Some of you might have heard it called other things. It's not only known as scripting. Some people call it DDA, which is a more technical term for it, meaning dynamic difficulty adjustment. Some of you might know it as just luck or even momentum. It's even been mentioned as something that might happen in career mode or pro clubs, but it's mainly linked to Ultimate Team. And that is the idea that before the game, EA may even decide who they want to win. They might decide that a certain player maybe hasn't got enough wins recently and deserves to beat you. They might have spent more money on the game, so EA favours them. Or EA might just be trying to even out your record. They might not want you to get too many wins in a row and progress through the game too quickly, because they want you to stay on the game and they want you to grind. I've got to say, scripting/DDA is probably the most known conspiracy. It's probably the most believed conspiracy as well. It even got to the point where some players decided that they wanted to release a lawsuit against EA Sports, accusing them of not selling a product that was fair. And when esports are involved, this can be quite difficult because there could be prize money that is going a certain way because of scripting. So it is quite a touchy subject and something that really did need to be taken seriously. And a lot of the reason this came about is because EA do own a patent on dynamic difficulty adjustment, but they've always maintained that they haven't used it in Ultimate Team. EA did release a statement to the public on this. They said some other non-limited examples of features of a video game that could be modified, which may or may not be detectable by the user, may be extra speed for an in-game character. It may be the throwing accuracy or shooting accuracy of the character. It might be the distance or height that they can jump. It might be the responsiveness of the controls. Or it may even reduce your ability in the opposite direction, so it might make you worse at all of the things we have just mentioned. EA did say at the end of the day, it's just football. Apparently this kind of thing happens in football in real life. There is a margin for error, so this stuff is going to happen sometimes. And it has been confirmed there is an error algorithm in trapping the ball. It's been said that it's built into the game. It's measured, obviously, through the individual stats of the player, and it does not take into account the score or the minute. A lot of players will have experienced it, especially towards the end of the game. A lot of your players maybe get a little bit sloppier on the ball. Maybe their passes are a bit more wayward. I even had a time on FIFA 17 once where my opponent got a corner. This was, I think, the Daily Knockout final. They got a corner right in the last minute we were drawing. Both my defenders went down with injuries as the corner came in, giving them a free run on it. And I've got to say, you will feel pretty bad about that. And it is definitely frustrating. But EA, they have been checked out, and apparently it's not in the game. And for me, even if scripting isn't a thing, the fact that so many people think it is a thing is a bad reflection on the game that EA have made. So even if it isn't a thing, EA, you need to sort it out. So next up, we've got quite a recent one, and we have got the squad battles glitches. A lot of you that have been doing icon swaps or even doing some challenges recently will probably have come across this. A lot of the icon swaps challenges that were introduced in the last few FIFAs require you to win a certain amount of squad battle games using players from a certain nation. So, for example, in the past it'd be win 8 games using an Argentinian squad, or a Mexican squad, or maybe a French squad, and people do find this boring. Squad Battle simply is a boring game mode, especially up until the release of EAFC when you were forced to play 6-minute halves. So that's 12 minutes without any cutscenes or anything, so it's about 15 minutes on a game that you're basically guaranteed to win. And even on a high difficulty, it can get boring pretty quickly. So people wanted to find a way around this, and over the years they have found a lot of different ways around this. One of the most popular early methods, which the Nepenthez did champion, was the elastic banded ball roll. So all you do is you'd go 1-0 up, you'd run into the corner, and you'd stick an elastic band around your controller doing a ball roll in the corner. And the AI didn't know how to deal with this. They'd kind of just stand there, or they'd chase you around, and they wouldn't actually ever get the ball. You'd have to do this manually, and you would have to reset it again in the second half. It meant once you'd scored, you only really needed to touch the ball from the kickoff in the second half and get back in that corner. So you could go and do something else. I used to do this back in the day. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. I used to go and do some schoolwork while my player was ball rolling in the corner, even maybe cook some dinner, something like that. It did make it a lot easier. But over time, these methods have evolved as well. We had the shielding one where you'd stand in the D and the player wouldn't be able to get the ball off you. Again, this came from the Nepenthez, who has actually been very helpful with this, so credit to you, Nep. So you'd stand in the D, you'd hold in L2 or LT, and as soon as a player challenged you, you'd release that. And the player would just get stuck behind you and they wouldn't win the ball. But because that player was running towards you trying to win the ball, the game would code that that defender was challenging, no one else would have to come in for the ball. So they'd kind of just stand there and nothing would really happen. This one was pretty effective, but I found it a little bit glitchy. I always preferred running to the corner. And for me, the one that was the most effective, I first saw this in a video from Revo back in the day, was kicking the ball to the corner. All you had to do, once you were ahead, was win the ball. You had to put a certain amount of power on it, so the ball would go towards the corner but not go out of play, and then your player would kind of run after it but not even get that close, and the ball would stop just before the corner flag. No one would run towards it, it would just stay there. I found that by far the easiest one to use. They were so helpful. EA have at least helped us and reduced the squad battles time, but I'm sure in future EAFC games people are going to find some really helpful squad battles glitches. Probably the most infamous moment for FIFA's history. Maybe not even just FIFA's history, but EA and even gaming as a whole to extent, because this has shaped a lot of things. This was when the UK Parliament called in Kerry Hopkins, who was the Vice President of Legal and Government at EA, to be interviewed about gambling, and in particular, gambling being aimed towards children. This wasn't just limited to FIFA, this was mainly for Star Wars Battlefront as well, because you could get a lot better at that game. You could unlock characters that were really OP only through loot boxes. And the main question here was whether these are ethical and whether it is just a bit of fun or whether it is addictive and it is too similar to gambling, because the UK recently have been very strict on their gambling laws. In some parts of the EU, FIFA points are even banned already, and there was talk that could happen in the UK, or at least that EA would have to release their game as an 18 so that only people that could legally gamble could play it. And of course, EA didn't want that. A big portion of not just people that buy the game, but buy FIFA points, will be kids. How many of you back in the day took your parents' credit card and took FIFA points? There's been videos on it by quite a lot of people. I'll shout out Vizza, he's done some very good ones, about how it's kind of got to the point where it's an epidemic with kids buying FIFA points. There was even a news article that I'm sure a lot of you have seen and laughed at, about when a mum said that hackers had entered their son's account and bought loads of FIFA points and spent them on packs. Obviously a quick side note, but a very important one. If you do need help with this, make sure you do reach out, because FIFA point gambling is a very real thing, and I will link Viz's video down below because I think it's very important that we do talk about the more serious things as well as the funny things in this video. But back to the point, the main thing that stood out from this hearing was one phrase, and one phrase only, and that was surprise mechanics. Kerry Hopkins went forward and said, it's not gambling, it's a surprise mechanic. It's like opening a Kinder Egg. You buy it because you're excited to see what you'll get and you want to see what's inside it. She went on to describe it as ethical and quite fun. She said it's not gambling. We disagree, there's evidence that shows that it leads to gambling. You've got all the evidence in front of you, you can make a judgment for yourself, but over anything else, this is the one thing that really makes me dislike EA. So moving on from that to something that is quite a bit more positive and something that a lot of people have praised EA for, and that is the pro player cards. These used to really be publicised by EA. They used to be quite a massive thing, but they've gone under the radar recently. For any of you that don't know, anyone who is a professional footballer and is in the game is allowed to contact EA. A lot of them do it through maybe their team, their agents, whatever, and they can get themselves a 99 rated version of themselves that has 99 rated in every stat. It's a very nice card design as well. It's quite a nice little teal blue colour, and a lot of these have never been seen. Some of them have famously even ended up on the market, but a lot of the cards you might have seen is David Myler, who obviously does stream FIFA. He's used his for some squad builder showdowns and just for some weekend league. And of course Diogo Jota, who is a very good FIFA player to the point where he could even qualify for events if he wasn't busy doing unimportant stuff like playing for Liverpool. These cards in recent years have been untradeable, but when they originally were released, as I mentioned earlier, they weren't. So a lot of you might not have heard this story before because it does date back to FIFA 13, which it's mad to say was 10 years ago now. And this is when pro player cards were first becoming a thing. And the player that it concerns might surprise you. And this was, at the time, a record-breaking sale for the most expensive Ultimate Team cards. And a lot of you will be thinking, was it Messi maybe? Or Ronaldo? Nope. It was Joey Barton. So, when this first came out, no one had seen these cards before. Because you'll know now, when they list all of the different card types in Ultimate Team, the pro player cards aren't there. So people saw this card, it's a nice little teal colour, people had never seen it before, didn't know what it was. So when a 95 rated Joey Barton is up on the market, people went mad. So they started the bidding at about 5.8 mil, it went to 7, went to 9, but eventually he became the first player ever to sell for the maximum 15 million coins. So a lot of you will be wondering, if this card was so good, why did it end up on the market? Why didn't Joey Barton use it? Well, apparently he doesn't play FIFA. It turned out that he got the card for his brother's account. His brother used it, and in his own words, on Joey Barton's tweet, he said that the card was shit. Personally, I think that might just be a skill issue. So we move on from talking about Joey Barton's rating to some more ratings that have caused quite a rumble, and that is the ratings reveal every year. A lot of people are always hyped for this, but there's a big conspiracy around it that EA deliberately do bad ratings for the publicity. And I'm sure we all know how infamous Ultimate Team's poor ratings are. Whether it was Van Dijk being higher rated than Diaz after having a poor season, whether it's Thomas Muller being a walkout whilst having no stats over 83. There's always going to be different opinions, but there's even some cards that people always agree are too high or always agree too low. A one that comes up frequently is that players for the more supported or more historically successful clubs get higher ratings because they have more fans and more people that are going to be willing to pay lots of money for them. So let me know what you think. I think this might just be a game of opinions, a bit of EA stupidity, but it is possible there's something else going on. Let me know. So with that, we have covered the entire tip of the iceberg, so we're going to move on and start getting deeper. It's time to go below the surface. And we start with Futmas Jesus. Back on FIFA 20, during what used to be my favourite promo, because it was based around SBCs, on the web app you could see a picture that Futmas Jesus had been released for the next 24 hours. He was 84 rated, he was really OP with his normal card, so people were really excited for this. He had decent pace, some really good dribbling, some solid shooting as well. The two cards either side of him, Guedes and Havertz, we did end up seeing. But this Jesus, he was here, he ended up even on Footbin, but we never saw him in game. And no one knows what happened to him. No one has a clue what happened to Futmas Jesus. We did kind of end up getting our Futmas Jesus later on, but it wasn't what we expected. During the 5 vs Ice promo, we got 2 versions of him, but it's just not the same. Next up, we've got what is up there for EA's most embarrassing moment, and of course it's going to be connected to esports again, because EA Esports is just a mess. So for this one, we are heading to a qualifying match for the Foot 20 Champions Cup. And the matchup in question here was between Brancher, who was a Maltese player, in second place, doing quite well in the Maltese E-Premier League. And he was up against Hasu 19. These two players, they were meant to be playing a game from their homes over the internet. They were meant to invite each other and play a qualifier. This was all sanctioned by EA. There was EA officials kind of monitoring it, making sure they were all playing fairly, giving the right results and everything. And these two players just couldn't connect to each other because of how bad the EA servers get. So the EA protocol on this is when people can't connect to each other, they give them 2 chances, and a double failure to connect gives both players a loss. And when it's EA's fault and you know your Wi-Fi's good, as it was in this case, that's just not fair. But because one of these players had to win the match and it couldn't go down as a draw, they decided that they needed to find a winner somehow. And instead of maybe just being patient, holding the tournament back a bit, letting them connect, giving them another chance, they went, no, let's get them to play rock, paper, scissors against each other online. So they went ahead, they played rock, paper, scissors through an app or something, I'm not too sure. And Hasu came out the winner. He wasn't happy about it, and of course Brancher, who lost, was not going to be happy about it whatsoever. EA did come back with a statement eventually, and they did point out this didn't actually kick anyone out of the tournament all the way. This just made it harder for obviously the player that lost to get through. So they kind of threw back the blame on the player and went, oh, you just weren't good enough. Which, let's be honest, when it's a proper esports tournament, it's going to be the finest margins. All these players are very, very good at the game, and it's just not fair. They said they're reviewing the situation to prevent what occurred from happening again, and luckily, it hasn't happened again. But why did it happen in the first place, EA? No loss glitches. This is going to be a fun one. I've never done this, but I'm aware of a lot of people who have, and not just maybe people I know, a lot of big names that claim to be pro players, or they're YouTubers that claim that they can get Elite 1 and help you with their game, have been known to use no loss glitches. I'm not going to name any names because you might turn up and break my monitor. But anyway, this has been found in quite a lot of games. Most recently on FIFA 23. Since Foot Champs came out in 17, all the way up to 23, there has been a no loss glitch. So the FIFA 23 one is actually one of the most easiest and most ridiculous ones. You'd think it'd get harder and harder for people to find these, but no. All you need to do before you go in the game is set your controller to one button. It's literally that easy. And then if you lose, it just doesn't count as a game. It's ridiculous, and you can do this over and over again. It doesn't log it as a match on Weekend League, and you can get a perfect record. Back on the old FIFAs, this actually used to be a bit harder. So one of the most known ones was on FIFA 20 and FIFA 21. You used to play via your phone hotspot, which would use your 4G or even 5G these days. And then if you were losing, all that you had to do was get someone to phone you. It would disconnect you from the game, but it wouldn't give you the loss. FIFA 17 one, the main one was specifically for PS4 players. This was reported to the EA devs, they didn't do anything about it. People were using this in draft because it was only a recent addition back then and people were caring a lot more about winning the draft. What you do if you were losing, you go onto the PS4 menu and you'd open Twitch and just watch a video on Twitch. As soon as you do that, the game doesn't count. Your opponent gets a loss, you end up with nothing. It got to the point on FIFA 17 where everyone was doing this. People had been known to play their semi-finals like 5, 6 or even more times, and so many people complained about this, but at the end of the day, EA just didn't care. You'd think they would. It was for Foot Champs, which is the mode that they push you to play more than anything else, but no. I've already said it a few times in this video, but this is just really pointing out how useless EA are at everything. Nerf theory. Now, this is still kind of going on at the moment, this controversy. This is a theory that is quite new, and it is all based around the Centurions promo from FIFA 23. When the game came out, the players had different stats to what they ended up having a few days later when you go into their in-games. So when you hover over a player, you press R3 on the PlayStation, it comes up with their in-depth stats. So you don't just get their pace, shooting, passing, all of that. You get everything that's specifics. You get their stamina, jumping, shot power, stuff like that. And he wasn't the only player involved in this, but the main player people use as an example was the Ibrahimovic card. So when he came out, it said on his card that he had 85 stamina, and then a few days later, he had 61. His jumping did go up. It went from 92 to 99, and his strength went up from 93 to 99, along with his aggression. But his balance went all the way down from 82 to 58. His agility went down by 9 as well, and they just did a little tweak on his reactions, putting it down by 1. EA did come forward and say this was a visual glitch only and that the new stats were correct, but everyone went mad about this, and rightly so, because if you've bought a player through looking at his stats and they're the wrong stats, even if they get changed, that's not the player you wanted, and he's going to go down in value if he's worse, isn't he? So a lot of people lost coins on this and were really not happy with EA. But then people started to think a bit more. What if this has been going on the whole time and we've just never caught onto it? What if this is the first time that EA have been caught actually changing the stats visually? What if they just do it in the game code and they never change anything that we see? This could have been going on for a long time. And a lot of people have said, I'm sure you'll have it with yourselves, when you first use a card, they feel a lot better than when they do when you've played for them for maybe 50 or 100 games. A lot of the time people thought the goalkeepers were only good for a little while. I knew a lot of people back on about FIFA 17 that would change their goalkeepers because after a few games they didn't play as well. And this kind of brought a lot of people back to that and thought that maybe it has legs. I personally think it might. It is very, very suspicious, and there's definitely cards that get worse. A lot of people will say that is because of the power curve, and when better cards come out, obviously the cards that you've got aren't as good. So if you have an 88 rated player at the start of the game, they're going to be a lot better playing against non-rare golds than they are playing against Team of the Years in February, March kind of time. So I do think it's a bit of both here. I do think it's a little bit imagined, but I do think there might also be some legs to it. This is a really interesting one because it's still going on, and I don't think we're done with it yet. EA adding players to the market. I first heard about this on FIFA 14 with the infamous Pele's on the market. It's another Nepenthez video. This guy's had a lot of influence, especially back in the day, over what people have found out about Ultimate Team. And this was a big surprise for everyone. The fact that 3 Pele's appeared on the market. There have been no Pele's all year. People have started saying to EA, like, is he even in packs? Where is he? And kind of to prove it, at the best time for EA, 3 Pele's turned up on the market at once. The most suspicious thing was that none of them played any games. And they all played for the same club. And if you'd had Pele and you'd had him in your account for a while, why wouldn't you have played with him? He's the best card in the game. Surely at least one of these Pele's would have been played with. And since that time, people have been paying a lot more attention to it, and we've seen it quite a few times where loads of cards that have been out for a few months suddenly appear on the market with no games played on them. A lot of people think in the last few FIFAs it's been happening with bronze cards because people are opening a lot less packs that contain them, and I don't really have a problem with that because I want bronze cards to be on the market. I do think they should be accessible. But obviously you could argue that if people are holding these cards for trading or whatever, and EA release them on the market, it's diminishing your profits, and that is something that EA have been quite known for trying to do, based on what we've talked about so far. The only maybe plausible explanation for this is investors, but even that probably wouldn't make sense, because a lot of investors are known to at least try out the cards, in case they're any good, or move them on a bit quicker. Most people flip cards on a daily basis, weekly at most. Not many people, if any investors, hold on to cards for months for no reason. Duplicate storage. As we spoke about earlier, people are getting so many duplicate cards from SBCs these days. So why wouldn't you have a storage for them? Because all you can do at the moment is stick them straight into an SBC, or unfortunately what a lot of people have to do with these high rated cards that could be useful is discard them. So people want a duplicate storage, somewhere to put them when you can't use them. But what not everyone knows is this actually used to be a thing back on FIFA 18 World Cup mode. It wasn't in normal Ultimate Team, but when the World Cup mode came out, you could only get players from packs. There was no transfer market. So they kind of gave you a duplicate storage to make things easier. And since they've done this, people have wondered, why can't we have this in the actual game? And again, people say it comes back to EA don't want you to have too many players for SBCs, get stuff for free. They want you to buy packs with coins or even FIFA points. I don't think there's too much conspiracy here. I think it's just lazy from EA, and they're kind of worried about how it would affect Ultimate Team and how it works. So I'd love for this to be a thing, but I'm not going to be surprised if EA don't ever end up adding it. Now, this one could kind of be a video on its own. We're going to be talking about the removed legends and removed icons. So, when the legends became icons, we did get rid of quite a few people. We got rid of Jens Lehmann, Jamie Carragher, Franz Beckenbauer, who people have been crying out to return to the game for years, Paulo Futre, who we are getting back in the AFC, Bremer, David Seaman, Effenberg, Valderrama, the infamous Lalas card, Gary Neville, Bierhoff, Bayer, Pauletta, Robbie Fowler, Teddy Sheringham, and Brian Laudrup were all removed when they made the transition. Now, they were just removed probably because EA thought there was too many cards, and these ones weren't particularly popular, but one that went with them, which a lot of people were sad about, was George Weah. And this is for completely different reasons, and this is one of the nicer bits on the iceberg, I think. The reason he can't be in it is because he's in political office. I'm not sure about the legal reasons around it, but apparently the president of Liberia isn't allowed to be in FIFA. A lot of people are hoping that when George Weah retires from political life, which might not happen for a little while yet, that he'll be back in the game, and I'd love to see him. He's a great card, he's a player with a lot of fans, so it'd be great to see him come back. In the last year in FIFA 23, we've had quite a lot of cards released as well. Some of them are just for innocent reasons, they weren't very popular, weren't good enough, whatever, but some of them are a bit more sinister. So we're going to start off with Inzaghi. Not really sure why he wasn't in the game anymore, but no one really used him, did they? Same with Pep Guardiola, not the most popular icon, but he did have his lovers, so I'm surprised that he was one that went. Okocha and Nakata, of course, stayed in the game, but downgraded to heroes, which I think is a little bit better suited for them. And then we get onto the legal ones. A lot of you would have been wondering where Diego Maradona is this year, and EA have been involved in an image rights case. It's a very, very complicated thing. There's quite a lot of different parties involved, but EA can't purchase the image rights for Maradona anymore. That dispute is still ongoing, so I can't really talk about it too much, but hopefully we'll see him in the game again eventually. Very, very popular player. One of the most popular players of all time, even, I'd argue. And we want FIFA to be the best game possible, so hopefully he'll make his return eventually. But then we've got two players that it's very unlikely will ever make a return to the game, and those are players that unfortunately are being removed for all of the wrong reasons. Firstly, we've got Ryan Giggs, who has been involved in quite a lot of controversy over the last few years, but mainly for the assault case he's been involved in, and I completely agree with EA here. It's a very, very bad look for them to have players like that. And on top of that, we have, unfortunately, probably the worst one, which is Mark Overmars, who was relieved from his duties at his club in a director capacity because of sexual assault and harassment allegations. And EA have done exactly the right thing here. They've got rid of him. They released a little statement, but they don't want to go into it too much, of course. Most of their fan base is quite young, won't really understand these things. So they've got rid of him on the quiet, which I think was the best thing to do, and I don't think he's ever going to come back. But a lot of people have argued that a lot of these other players, current players and past players, have had a lot of controversy in their career, and they argue that maybe these legends should be able to stay in the game and you should separate the football and the footballer from the person outside of that. I don't think you can do that, but I'd be interested to see what other people think. So our final thing on this bit of the iceberg is going to be coin sellers. They're still around now, but not as much. You've probably seen them on a few YouTube channels that continue to promote them. But back in the day, FIFA 14, FIFA 15, even to an extent FIFA 16, these were everywhere. So you would have heard of loads of them. U7 Buy, still about now, still quite popular. MMOGA, of course, they sponsored a lot of the Sidemen. FIFA Ninja, who you would have seen on Chris MD's channel, and loads of others. Now, of course, using these was against EA's terms of service, but for a long time they did not catch people. It's got to the point now where they're maybe a little bit over the top with it. If you even sell a few players for something that doesn't line up with the market price, they start to investigate you, maybe will even soft ban you from the market without telling you. But back in the day, EA were terrible at catching people who were doing this, and it was so much easier because you could transfer them in so many ways. Whether it was through player auction or whether it was through a different way, there was lots of ways of getting coins. They were very, very readily available, and they were much, much cheaper than the equivalent amount of FIFA points. Now, whilst people didn't really have a problem with the coin sellers themselves, apart from EA of course, there was a little bit of conspiracy about them that was based on a different game, which was World of Warcraft. And that was that prisoners in China were being forced to play FIFA matches to grind out the coins that these coin sites would then illegally sell on to other people. There was no evidence, there wasn't even a sniff of anything that this was ever done with EA. It was just speculation based on another game. The way that they actually got the coins is a little bit technical, but it's quite interesting. They were made by intercepting packets between the EA servers and the console. And what this did, because not all the packets went through, some of them were intercepted by a program on your computer. As soon as you loaded into the game, it tricks them into thinking you'd won it 3-0, gave you the coins for winning the game 3-0, and you could do this several times a minute. So, back in the day, if you ordered about 1 million coins, it'd take maybe 25 minutes for them to load up your account with 1 million coins. They would have had their own PlayStations, Xboxes, running accounts that would be doing this all day, every day, and then they had coins that I could transfer that way as well through the player auction I mentioned earlier. So, there's not really anything that sinister about the coin buys, but there was a bit of speculation back in the day. So now we move on to the body of the iceberg, the real meat of the video, stuff that not everyone's going to know about, but there is quite a lot of importance behind quite a lot of these things. And we're starting with probably the biggest thing that's ever happened on FIFA Twitter, and that is IconGate. So for those of you that haven't heard of it, IconGate mainly happened, it's been going on for a while, but it all came to a head on the 10th of March 2021, which is obviously part of the FIFA 21 game cycle. And this was when EA released a tweet saying that we are aware of the allegations currently circulating within our community related to FIFA 21 Ultimate Team items. A thorough investigation is underway, and if we identify improper conduct, we'll take swift action. We want to be clear, this type of behaviour is unacceptable, and we in no way condone what is alleged to have happened here. You can read the rest if you want to, and pause the video. So some of you may be wondering what this relates to. Why did EA put out a statement like this? What was going on? And there is a lot of evidence that one of the EA employees, who has come to be known as EA Shay, was giving people icons for money. And it might not have been just icons, you could also buy Team of the Years, rare items, even some golds if you want to spend a little bit less money. But you can see here, some people have leaked some DMs that he did on Facebook Messenger with them. It was $2,500 to get a Moments R9 card, and it was about $1,000 to get a Moments Hullet. And this was in about March, so these cards were still well ahead of the curve at the time, and they could have given you a big advantage in the weekend league. So we see as we move down, he had a wide range of cards like we were saying earlier. He'd charge you for Team of the Years. You could get 2 Team of the Years for €1,000. He even did some 3-2 deals at some points. It's not clear whether this person's actually called Shay or whether they just use it as their EA name. It's probably the latter, but I do believe they were caught eventually. And quite a lot of people did actually manage to get these cards before he was caught. And I don't think the accounts related were actually ever caught. It was just EA Shay himself who did end up getting into trouble. And you can see some screenshots here, people that were getting 3 of the best icons as well as some Team of the Years all in one go. And I do presume that this was all moving around on Discord or through more secret channel stuff that is more secure than just like Twitter group chats or something like that. But EA Shay, he was at this for a while. He was known to do it on FIFA 21, may have started earlier, who knows. It just shows you how much control EA employees can have over your account should they want to. A lot of the time when stuff goes wrong, they say we can't do this. Compensation for stuff takes ages. Whilst people are obviously furious that people were cheating the game and buying these players, people were also not happy with EA because EA had shown just how easy it is to put cards into an account. And this controversy came at a time that EA were under a lot of pressure because of the next thing I'm going to talk about. Only a year earlier, they gave away the details of over 1,600 pro players to anyone that wanted them. This was one of the most ridiculous things that's happened. You got access to their date of birth, you got access to their address, their full address, not just the city where they lived, the actual house, postcode, all of it. And you must think, this must have been quite hard to get all of this information. It wasn't. All you had to do was register for the global series. So if you were a pro player, you go in, you put your EA account details in, say I'm interested in playing in this event, can you sign me up? And you'd press enter, and then you'd get the details of everyone else that had already signed up. So this affected all the big pros, whether you're talking Tex, MS Dasari, Grilla, even #Harry was still involved at this point. Any pro you know who's been playing for a few years was probably hurt by this. So all of their details was out there for whoever wanted it. And obviously these players were going to be massive targets for everyone because they had the best players on their accounts. They're pros at the end of the day. Luckily it all got cleaned up in the end. I don't think there was too many victims, but it's just embarrassing. Also on top of this, around a similar time, if you didn't want the pro player's account, if you wanted anyone's account, all you had to do was have the email address for it. It's just as simple. You went into EA Live chat, went, this is my email address, I forgot my password. They wouldn't ask for anything else, wouldn't ask for your date of birth to check, they wouldn't ask for your security question, which you set up with EA to check. They went, what do you want your new password to be? I'll get that sorted for you. As soon as that happened, you were into their account. You could get into anyone's account as easily as you wanted, and everyone was targets for this. So I can name various YouTubers, I could name various streamers, I could name various pro players. This was probably one of the worst data breaches they've had, and it was completely their own fault. Chemgates. This went a little bit under the radar at the time. It was a massive issue, but it was only discovered towards the end of TOTS, and a lot of people had stopped playing at that time. And if this had been discovered earlier, it would have been a very big problem, because YouTuber Righteous Onyx discovered that chemistry doesn't work properly on FIFA 16. Now, the way he found this out was very interesting. It actually involved going into career mode and testing some skills out. So he worked out that there was a skill move you could do, which was the no-touch step-over sprint, that was only available to players at 86 dribbling or above. So in career mode, he had a Lacazette at 85 dribbling, tried him out, he couldn't do it. Tried it again with Lacazette after putting him into the old-fashioned training where you could boost stats quite easily. Saw that his dribbling stat had gone up to 86, tried it again, and it worked. So then he put this into Ultimate Team because, of course, players are meant to get a dribbling boost if they have certain chemistry starters on. And the first thing that he realised, whilst using Juan Mata, who had 85 dribbling and a basic on him, which should give him a +1, was that he couldn't do it. And after investigating this further, it came to the fore that the basic chemistry style didn't work at all on any card on FIFA 16. It was meant to give them a little boost all round. It gave them no boost at all. On 10 chem, they'd play exactly the same as if they were on 6 chem. But it didn't end there. It went a lot deeper and got a lot more serious than just the basic chem style not working properly. Because after digging a little bit deeper, he found out that chemistry only worked properly on players that came out on the day that the game was released. So the only cards that could get a proper chemistry boost with up to 3 chevrons, if you're using a hunter, a catalyst, something like that, were the day 1 cards. So that would be like original gold Ronaldo, original gold Griezmann, cards like that. What made this very, very interesting is that even the winter refresh cards, which are just upgraded versions of the normal golds to reflect people that have had a good season and stuff, didn't work properly with chemistry. So in effect, the 83 Griezmann was better than the 84 Griezmann, because the 83 one could get a chemistry style on it, which would boost its stats, but whatever chemistry you got on the 84 Griezmann, it would play like it had 4 chemistry. And where this gets really, really interesting is with some of the special cards. So every single special card would play as if they only had 4 chemistry. So this basically made first informs useless, and even some second informs if they weren't very generous with the stat boosts. Righteous Onyx tested this out with Perisic, that legendary Cam Perisic card, and it turned out that he just wasn't that usable, because normal Perisic could get stats boosted that made him better than a second inform card. So people were paying well over the odds for cards that weren't even good. But on top of this, between him and the Nepenthes, they discovered something else with the team of the seasons. And that was that these cards played with the same chemistry, whatever position they're in. So Nepenthes tried Lyon, who was a left-back for Porto, as a striker, and his stats didn't go down. They didn't go up either, regardless of what chemistry was on him, but they stayed the same. He was a left-back playing up front on 1 chemistry, and he played like he had 4. Because if you've played FIFA in the past, you'd know cards are on 0, 1, 2 chemistry. They are basically useless, however good their stats are. This changed the game. Shapeshifters weren't even a thing, but you could play anyone in basically any position, apart from in goal. And if they were a team of the season, they'd be pretty useful. If they were anyone else, they'd be useless. And I do find this quite interesting, because I think it kind of links into the idea of the handicap as well. A lot of people back in the day would use gold teams, and they'd be really broken and really OP. And some people have been saying this has been going on since FIFA 12, and people didn't discover it. So a lot of people go back and they say, oh, I miss when you could use a silver or a gold team and they'd be OP. Maybe that's because the game wasn't working properly, and I do miss that time, but maybe those cards weren't actually any better than they are now, those basic gold cards. Maybe every other card was just worse. International reputation. Now, a lot of you have probably seen this in the past, and maybe even it's been on your screen and it's just bypassed you, you haven't noticed it. If you've ever been on Footbin, you'd see it in the corner. You can even sort your players by it. International reputation. But this stat isn't visible on the player's cards, so what is it? So every player has an international reputation, and it is ranked in stars between 1 star as the lowest and 5 stars as the highest. And it's a purely cosmetic boost to the player's overall. And what I mean by this is their main number, their over, is boosted, but it doesn't affect their in-game stats. So how it works is it's different for the kind of card you're using. It works differently for bronze, silvers, golds and so on. Players with 1 or 2 star rating don't get any kind of boost. From 51 rating onwards, a player gets a 1+ over if he has 3 stars in the category. For 4 star players, it becomes a +1 if they're between 36 rated and 66 rated, and a +2 if they're above 67 rated. And obviously, 5 stars is a +3 to the ratings. There's not that many players on FIFA 23 that have the 5-star rep. It's Messi and Ronaldo, as well as Jan Oblak, Robert Lewandowski, Manuel Neuer and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who's an 82, actually is a 79 rated card. They've just added 3 onto his over. All of the icons have a +5-star reputation as well, and what's quite interesting is the highest rated player who doesn't actually get a rep boost, so their true over is actually 88 on FIFA 23, is Bernardo Silva. This came to prominence again in about the FIFA 14, FIFA 15 era. There was a lot of videos, a lot of people talking about it, but it seems to have completely gone away and people don't really discuss it anymore, even though it does reflect how good your player is, and it might be why some players are OP and others aren't, because if you're looking around the 81, 82, 83 rated player marks, some of them have a true over of 82, 83, but some of them's true over could even be 80. And I think the player that showed this the best over the years is probably Thomas Müller. He normally has a 4-star international rep that gives him a +2. And if you look at his stats, he's normally an 86, 87 rated card. It does look a lot more like an 83, 84 rated card at the best of times. Okay, where do I start with this one? EA Twitter. So there's a few accounts we're going to have to talk about here that are all associated with EA that have had their own controversies. We've got their old managers, their old community managers, Corey and Zaro, and also the EA Sports FIFA Direct Communication account. So a lot of you might not know who Corey and Zaro are, and a lot of you that do might know them because they're linked to this man, which is Kurt. So a few people followed this account because they gave updates, kind of like how the direct communication account does now, but they weren't as consistent with it, and they actually missed a lot of stuff when people were asking them questions, whatever. They'd just ignore them. Zaro not as much, but Corey sometimes would post about stuff that isn't FIFA on his work account. People would reply with questions about maybe SBCs that were broken, or glitches in the game, stuff like that. Stuff that's quite important for a community manager to listen to. And he even went as far as replying in the past and going, "Don't message me about work on this, I'm not talking about it," on his work account. So going back to Kurt, he was a pro player back in the day. It's quite interesting in what's happened to him now, because he's now involved in developing a rival game to EAFC, which is called Goals. And a lot of that has come from his disdain for EA Sports, and he always called them out on mechanics that were poor, things that didn't work properly, and I think he really could have been a good voice for the community, but EA didn't want to work with him. So it ended up getting pretty heated, pretty aggressive. He'd call out the community manager accounts for not doing their jobs properly, or he'd try and call out EA as a whole, but through them, because they were the people that you were meant to talk to if you had problems. Of course, he did the usual. He was calling EA rats, complaining they weren't listening to him. It ended up with him getting banned from the competitive scene for a few months when there was loads of important tournaments on, because apparently he'd been sending abusive messages. Now, EA never came up with these messages. They never showed them to anyone, and there's not actually any evidence from anyone's side that they existed. I think the community managers just got tired of him. And whilst I don't blame them, I don't think he should have been banned overall, but that's something for you to make your own judgment on, and I might even make a whole video on it because it is a very complex saga. But whilst Corey has left EA since, he did leave a legacy, and that is this tweet here. You would have seen this quoted, especially on Twitter a lot, when EA make mistakes and have to rectify stuff, and that is the famous "thousands of eyes" quote. This is where Corey was replying to someone who was asking about how dynamic images work, and he said, "Oh, it's not as simple as that. We have thousands of people that have to look at everything before it's approved." And then people were quick to point out all of the really stupid mistakes that have made their way into the game recently. This is when a lot of assets would be reused from old FIFAs without updating the icons, players would have incorrect dynamic images, and a whole host of other things that I don't have time to get into now, but there's a whole account dedicated to these mistakes, and I'll leave that in the description. But Corey and Zaro kind of disappeared during FIFA 20. People wished Zaro well, people didn't wish Corey well at all, and they were replaced by the EA FIFA Direct communication account, which is a lot better, but I do like this tweet right here. The worrying thing about this is someone probably was going to post this on their personal account, which is fair enough, but why are they talking like a proper NPC? The FIFA 23 FIFA point refund lawsuit. Now, we've already spoken about how FIFA points carry a lot of controversy and how they've been banned in some countries, such as Belgium and the Netherlands. And obviously, they've been investigated in the UK as well. So, because it's so hard to get any money out of EA themselves, PlayStation users went in a different direction and they've attacked Sony. And whilst that might sound a bit weird, they are the owners of the PS Store and they facilitate the transactions, which means they're the people effectively selling it to you and you can blame them. So over 1,000 FIFA players in Austria came together and they took a case against Sony to the courts. Most of the claims were said to be around the $800, $900 mark, but one of them went as high as $97,000. The District Court of Hermagor did end up classifying it as illegal gambling, which meant that Sony would have to pay the money. Some of it has been paid, around 360 quid has been paid to most players, but there's still an appeals process before it's finalised, so they don't want to pay the big fines as of yet. It'll be interesting to see where this one goes. I don't reckon it will be much further, but at least some people have got a little bit of money back. Now, we get into the really interesting stuff as we go to the depths of the iceberg. And we start this section with one of my favourite things that's ever happened in FIFA, and that is the case of Black Messi. So, a lot of you have probably heard about this, but maybe forgotten about it, because it happened back in FIFA 14. I originally saw this in a Rotoshaw video, and I'm sure a lot of you did as well, and it's just ridiculous. So this is Joseph Akpala, who's a Nigerian striker playing for Werder Bremen, and he was just a normal card like any other, until one update gave him Messi's stats. You can see the card here. He's still playing for Werder Bremen. It's still got Akpala's profile picture, but he's Argentinian now. And if you click on his in-games, he has Messi's stats. I don't know how this ended up happening. He hasn't got the same name. He's not from the same country or anything, so I genuinely have no idea. But the fact you could buy a silver card and it'd play exactly like Messi just sums up how chaotic these early FIFAs were. And what made it even better is if you went into a game, he didn't have a head. Whether he could score headers and you couldn't see his head, or if he had no hitbox at all, I don't know, but he had a multicoloured head, and then when it went into a cutscene, he had no head whatsoever. We still have no idea how this happened. EA never commented on it, but it is quite a funny one. Home team advantage in FIFA 23. So, this conspiracy is one I hadn't actually heard of before making this video, and it comes from the EA forums and a little bit on Reddit as well. Some people seem to believe that if you're playing an online mode, there's a massive advantage for the team that's at home. People have been saying that they cover the ground faster, they win tackles more, and the away team just feels like the AI is a bit lazy and they're just completely sluggish when you're controlling them. And this did actually go as far as getting an official response from EA, from Darko, who is one of the community managers at the moment, and to be fair to him, he is actually quite helpful. And he said this advantage doesn't exist in the game, and it might be an issue with the connection, which I do think would make sense, because obviously traditionally, I'm not sure if it's still the same in Ultimate Team, but when you're playing seasons and stuff like that, the home player will be the host, and the away player does join them, so the away player naturally might have a slightly worse connection, especially if their internet isn't that good anyway. Which obviously is why it could be delayed, why it could feel slow. So do you think there's any truth to this? Because I do think EA are actually right with this one, and it probably is just an internet issue. The permanent injury glitch. Now this is another very recent one taking place on FIFA 23, and it goes back to a point we've talked about a lot in this video, which is why players seem to get worse the more that you use them. And I'm not sure who this was originally discovered by, but it did the rounds on Twitter, and it was popularised by Boras Legend, who a lot of you will know is a pro FIFA player and streamer. So the evidence for this theory isn't actually in the game itself, but it's on the companion app and the web app. So players won't have the injury icon on them or anything, because obviously they can't play in a game, if that is the case. But when you go on their card, look at their informations, it'll often say that they have an injury. And as we know, when a player gets injured in a game, they can often play on. This is especially if they're in career mode, they can play on, but for a bit, their stats are lower. And if a player's got a permanent injury, their stats are going to be lower the whole time. So this may just be a visual glitch, or it might be something a lot worse that does make your players a bit useless. I'm not too sure, but I don't want to dismiss this one straight away. It'll be interesting to see if it's in the next game. All roads lead to foot. In 2021, CBC managed to get their hands on some classified EA documents. There was a lot of interesting stuff in here, but the main part of it was around Ultimate Team. And using EA's own words, it said that they wanted to funnel players out of the other modes to get them playing Ultimate Team. They went as far as describing the mode as the game's cornerstone, and said that players will be actively messaged and incentivised throughout the summer to try and convert to Ultimate Team players. And what made this even more interesting is that it happened at exactly the same time as the fixed career mode scandal. We're not going to go into too much depth on that, because obviously this is an Ultimate Team video. But I love career mode, and at the start of FIFA 22, it was absolutely broken. If you played it, you'll remember players were always in the wrong positions. In like cup finals, teams would field their C team for no reason. The negotiations were really off. You could buy players for stupidly low or stupidly high amounts of money. And a lot of the cutscenes, and notoriously the press conferences, didn't work properly. So a lot of people were thinking this was EA being lazy and not want to spend money. But after this, a lot of people were thinking, it's just broken so that people will be guided towards playing Ultimate Team instead. EA said that the story was being really exaggerated, and of course they had to have the disclaimer in there that they deny that it's gambling and it's all great fun for everyone involved. I do think this theory 100% has legs. I'd go as far as to say it is definitely the truth. They don't want you to play pro clubs, they absolutely never update it. They do drive you to Volta sometimes because you'll spend money on the outfits and stuff, but at the end of the day, they want you to play Ultimate Team, don't they? Even when the journey was a thing, it pushed you into playing Ultimate Team by giving you the Alex Hunter card. Sometimes EA will pretend they care about the other game modes, a lot of the time they won't even bother pretending, but I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that they want you playing Ultimate Team and spending your money on FIFA points. The Nepenthez gambling fine. So far in this video, we've given Nepenthez a lot of praise. He's brought a lot of issues to EA's attention, and I do think he genuinely does try and make the game better and more enjoyable for a lot of people. And whilst I'm not a fan of his content myself, I do respect him. Back between 2015 and 2016, Nepenthez was in hot water for one of his sponsors. So, back mainly in FIFA 16, but also a bit in FIFA 15, Nepenthez was promoting a website called Foot Galaxy, which was described as a social gaming site. But it did allow you to place bets with virtual currency, where have I heard that before EA Sports, about stuff that would happen in FIFA and in the real world. The site made about £96,000 profit before it was shut down by the UK Gambling Commission, and the main problem of this was not the fact that it was gambling in general, but that the site had no age restriction, and the Nepenthez, of course, as a FIFA YouTuber, whether he likes it or not, was advertising towards a lot of children. The main article that was talking about this, from both the BBC and other sources, says that one victim, who was a 14-year-old boy, spent around £860 a day on this website. So both the Nepenthez and his business partner Dylan Rigby were given hefty fines, adding up to £265,000. From my understanding, a lot more of this went to Nep's business partner, but he did get, obviously, still quite a significant fine himself. Dylan Rigby was in charge of the Foot Galaxy social accounts and all of that was shut down straight away. And of course, while this is quite controversial, and it is a bad thing at the end of the day, I do think it was an honest mistake from the Nepenthez, and he's done a lot against FIFA points and the like since. So, whilst he has made a mistake, it is in the past now, and I do think everyone has moved on. The lowest rated foot card ever. So when you think of the lowest rated foot card, they're normally in the high 40s. I think the lowest that I've seen on a FIFA is about 46, 47 rated. But that is nowhere near the lowest rated card ever. Back in FIFA 10, there was a 25 rated card. And this was, funnily enough, for someone that didn't even play football anymore, it went to Ian Barraclough, who'd actually retired the year before and was now a coach for Scunthorpe. And he was a very, very well-respected figure at the club. He got them promotion from League 2 and promotion from League 1, and he'd been playing in the Championship towards the end of his career. So, you're probably wondering how he ended up getting this card when he didn't even play. Well, allegedly, because there is no footage of it, at least no verified footage, he was coaching a game, he was on the touchline shouting at the players and whatever, and a clearance came and landed at him. And the story goes that he took this clearance first time on the volley and managed to send it all the way into the opposition's top corner. Obviously the goal didn't count, it had gone out for a throw-in, but it is pretty cool. If anyone does have footage of this, I would absolutely love to see it. But it's probably going to go down as an urban legend. Because even back in the late 2000s, not every EFL game was streamed, captured like it is now. So he ended up getting this card with 88 shooting, but all the rest of his stats were 11. I'm not sure why they went with 11 exactly. Maybe it makes more sense to make them 25, because that was the over on his card. But who knows? I don't think this card was that usable, because obviously he basically couldn't move or control a ball, and he was really weak, had no stamina. But it's still a pretty cool card and a really unique one to try out on Ultimate Team. So now, we move on to some of the least known, but some of the most serious FIFA conspiracies, as we go beyond the iceberg. And we're starting with 120 rated Ultimate Team cards. A lot of you will be aware of this actually in the new FIFA mobiles, but these were a thing quite a while before that. So back in the day, FIFA Mobile wasn't actually marketed as FIFA Mobile. Up until about FIFA 16, it was just called the same thing as the main game. So from 11 until 16, Ultimate Team was the same, just with some extra cards in it. So you can see in some of the pictures, the art style was the same, a lot of the promos were the same, but there were these really strange green cards that cropped up at the end of FIFA 16. Some of them did go as high as 120, but I can only find footage of ones going up to about 105. You can see all of the main players here. We've got Ronaldo, Ibrahimovic, big names at the time, getting over 99 rated cards, which we hadn't ever seen before. And you might think this is a bit of a strange one. Why is this beyond the iceberg when everyone knows about FIFA Mobile and their 120 rated cards? Well, I'll tell you why. Back in this time, EA didn't really see FIFA Mobile as a money-making thing. They saw it as a place to test new features that they eventually wanted to put in the full console game. So maybe they were planning on giving us 120 rated cards in the proper game, and maybe people didn't receive it well enough. I'm not sure why, but I still think one day we are going to see cards that are 100 rated and over in the main game. The research paper on fan subversiveness. Now this one is a bit out there, and it's not really a conspiracy as such, but I do find it very, very interesting. It just shows how bad the relationship is with the fans. And in 2021, Peter Ciuda, a university lecturer, released a research paper, Sports Gamers Practices as a Form of Subversiveness, the example of FIFA Ultimate Team. That might sound boring, right? But this man managed to write a 32-page paper on how much the fans hate EA. With the abstract of his paper, which is an introduction, mentioning that he studied the FIFA forums for over 2 years, as well as Reddit and a few other places, to try and get a taste of people's attitude towards EA. He mentioned how people criticised the game over its micropayments and other practices, and how some people feel like EA try and manipulate them into spending money. And he also spoke about how this has given rise to illegal coin sites, how people have started using bots, whilst also questioning why we carry on playing the game when we dislike it so much. And he came to two conclusions basically, with one of them just being that it's addictive. People love opening packs. On top of that, there's a theory that I very much agree with, which is we all love football, but you can't go out and play football all day. You'd be absolutely knackered. So you need another way to get your football fixed when there's no games on and you can't play yourself. And FIFA is probably, however poor it is, the best way of doing that. The FIFA wire fraud case. Now this has already been covered by Vizza on one of his videos, and it's probably the darkest thing on here, but I have to talk about it. If you're talking about the worst things to ever come out of FIFA, I don't think it's something you can avoid talking about. And this links to something we talked about earlier with our coin sponsors and how they generate coins. This was a 23-year-old programmer who went by the name of Anthony Clark and a few of his friends, and they managed to do this packet intercepting, finishing games early to get coins on a massive, massive scale. They ended up making over $16 million overall, and it got to the point where they were making over $500,000 a day. With this wealth, him and his friends, they started purchasing loads of gifts for their families. He bought his mother a house in cash. They bought cars in cash. And this actually alerted the FBI. They wanted to know how these kids, as they saw them, had suddenly ended up with Mercedes, Lamborghinis, houses with no mortgage, and they got in contact with EA. So on September the 17th in 2015, they raided the houses of all four involved. And when they did this, the FBI found the key to solving this case and getting that money back that they thought had wrongfully been taken. And that was through the computer of Eaton Zvarv, one of the four men involved. The FBI said they didn't actually want to criminally charge the boys. They just wanted them to understand it was wrong and give all the money back. And all of Anthony's collaborators did plead guilty and they gave all the money back, which meant that they didn't go to jail. However, Anthony himself was convinced he hadn't actually done anything wrong and broken any laws, so he decided to fight it. The argument was from the lawyers was that for a wire fraud case to go through, money or property needs to be taken or stolen. And FIFA coins are virtual, they're not real. You can't physically take them off people, and they don't count for any money in the real world, so they said he didn't do anything wrong. However, the FBI, who were prosecuting against them, argued that if these weren't worth anything, why did people buy them? How did they make 16 million? And the FBI were successful in getting Anthony prosecuted. There was still a possibility of appeal, and Anthony said if it happened, he'd take the prison sentence on the chin and then go back to his life doing software development after. But this, unfortunately, is where it took a very dark turn, and viewer discretion is advised. Whilst he was awaiting sentencing, Anthony had a massive birthday party. And because it was going to be probably his last one as a free man for a while, he went all out. According to family members and friends, there was a lot of drug taking, a lot of alcohol being consumed, and unfortunately, the morning after, he was found dead. It has always been believed that this was accidental, as he did want to fight the case, and he did want to carry on with his life. So, to this day, his lawyers argue that he didn't commit the crime, and who knows, if the appeal had gone through, he may have been found not guilty under a different judge. But whatever happens, and regardless of the outcome of this case, may he rest in peace. The free draft token and free foot champs glitch. Now this one is very interesting because when draft came out in FIFA 16, it was one of the most popular additions to the game mode ever. And I still think it's a great game mode. I'd love for them to add SBC cards and make the rewards better, but I do enjoy it. And now we get to enter it quite often. You get your coins from div rivals you can maybe use on it, and quite often there's a draft token SBC. But back on FIFA 16, it was really hard to enter the draft. And this carried on, I'd say, until about FIFA 20. Draft tokens were exceptionally rare, and people would celebrate like they'd packed a high-level inform if they got one. So, people were finding any way possible to try and get themselves a draft token. And the most successful method, which really went under the radar, was the draft token self-service tool. And this is actually still open. It doesn't work properly anymore because it's designed for old FIFAs, but it is still on the website and you can go and check it out. How this originally worked is that you chat to an EA advisor and say I've been disconnected from a draft match, I was winning, whatever, and then they direct you to this website, you could click on it and get yourself a free draft token. But then people realised you don't need to talk to the EA advisor. Just put the website in and it will take you straight there. So that's what people did. You go on it, say you've been disconnected or whatever, just press check my account, and it'd give you a draft token, sometimes. If you'd actually been disconnected, it did always work, but sometimes, if you hadn't been disconnected or even played the draft, then you get a token anyway for free. This was a little bit risky, because EA said false claims will result in a ban, blah blah blah, but I've never seen anyone get banned for this. That's only half the story with the self-service tools, because there was a much more appealing thing that you could do with them. And this one, unfortunately, is now shut down, unlike the draft tool, but back in the day, when daily knockouts were first a thing and they were actually really hard to win, you could bypass them and get into the weekend league without even playing a game. And the way you do this was very, very similar. You'd go onto the EA live chat and you'd say, hi, I was in the daily knockout final, I was winning, and I disconnected. And then more often than not, they'd either grant you access through that, without even sending you to the self-service tool, or they'd send you to the self-service tool and you do it that way. And very similarly, this one had a bit of a lower success rate, but it would work even if you were lying and hadn't got to the daily knockout final, or even played it at all. And no one seems to remember this, or no one even really acknowledged it at the time. It never became a controversy. EA never really got wind of it, I'd say. And it kind of operated under the radar the whole time. The only notable video I can find on it is from I'm a Duck Quack, about 6 years ago now, and it only had a few thousand views. So I think this remained a secret within a small group in the FIFA community, and that's probably why EA never caught them out. The 0 rated glitch. Now this was a glitch on FIFA 13, and this was first discovered by Atani, and this is quite a worrying one if you just purchased a really expensive player, because they were really rare at the time. In the video discovering this, Atani shows himself buying a player, he puts him in his squad, and he comes up as a bronze 0 rated player, despite being a gold. Luckily, this was purely cosmetic, but apparently it had been a thing in previous games for some people, and if this ever happened to me, it would have really given me a scare back in the day. But that wasn't the only game-breaking glitch discovered by Atani on this game, because he also discovered something much worse, and that was the never-ending game glitch. Now, I'm sure a lot of you didn't actually play at the time, but some of you, if you're old enough, might remember that FIFA 13 had custom set pieces. And you can see in the footage here, Itali's winning 5-1, he's absolutely thrashing his opponent, and then the screen flicks as it goes through a custom set piece corner, and all the players are standing around the person taking the corner. But the important thing here, and the thing that makes this glitch possible, is that the ball moves, it gets knocked to the side, and it's not by the taker's feet anymore. This tricks the game into thinking that the corner hasn't been taken, and you see the guy stay standing in the corner. And when the corner's not been taken, you'll know it's still in the game now, you can only get a certain distance to the corner taker, and there's like an invisible barrier. It's the same with throw-ins, that stops you going any closer. So that means that Itani can't get the ball, and unlike in current FIFA games, the clock's paused when you take a set piece, which means that this game's never going to end unless someone quits. So basically, this was kind of an early version of the no-loss glitch, but a lot more toxic, because you could end up sitting there for hours. And finally, we move on to something that I cannot believe goes under the radar this much, and is very, very sinister, involving a lot of big names. And it should have ruined their careers, but for some reason, it never came to the fore that much. And that is the Run the Foot Market stream sniping saga. So I'm sure a lot of you all know Nick, who goes by Run the Foot Market. He's a FIFA YouTuber and streamer, and he focuses on just having a good time whilst trying to make people lots of coins and giving trading tips. And I love him. I think he's literally the best channel out there for making coins, but he's also very, very good to watch as a streamer, and he's quite talented at the game. So in FIFA 20, Nick was starting to get very good at the game, very good at using the mechanics, and was even hitting the top 100 of the leaderboard sometimes, which as a YouTuber is really impressive. However good you are, if you're not a pro player and you're just playing it for content, that is a big, big achievement. But then something started happening in Nick's weekend leagues. If you guys have ever played it and you're a very good player, you might play one pro player in a weekend, maybe 2 max. And Nick was starting to face 5 pros, 6 pros out of 30 games on some weekends, which is a bit suspicious if you ask me. Unless you get extremely bad luck, you shouldn't be playing against pros until you're maybe in Elite 2, even Elite 1 kind of area, because there's still a big difference between Elite 1 players and pro players. And this wasn't really suspicious at the time, but looking back on it, it should have been. So, in America, probably in Europe as well, but not to the same degree, there is a big gap between those who are good at the game but make content and those who see themselves as proper hardcore pros. And a lot of these pros, they grind the entire time to try and make this game their living, with most of them trying to get involved in the EMLS or even travelling to South America to get involved in the Libertadores and competitions like that. But there is a lot of competition for these places and a lot of players that want to get involved and get signed with teams to become a full professional. They thought they were superior at the game. They thought they were the best. They worked harder than anyone else. They wanted the rewards for it. And then they see Nick, who's playing the game, sometimes getting Elite 1, which is lower than them, but getting a lot more money because of his YouTube channel. And I think this is just pure, horrible jealousy. Because while Nick was very good at the game, he streamed, make money off it, fair enough. He's always been a streamer for having a good time. And also he helps people. We can't forget that. He helps people do stuff for free. And a lot of the pros have been spending FIFA points, which is probably where more of the jealousy comes from. And this jealousy eventually boiled over into the North American Pro Discord. In this Discord, they'd have a channel for when Nick went live, they'd try and send all the pro players to go and stream snipe him to stop him getting into the top 100. And according to Nick, who I'd say would be quite reliable on this, he has no reason to lie, the entire EMLS were in this. Every single pro in North America was in on this, apart from Buck Army and Mike LaBelle, who of course played for # United and has worked for EA in the past. The main two that were named as the ringleaders were Jukes, who was playing for Chicago Fire at the time, and Ajit Power, who at the time had just become NA champion for a qualifier and got into the FUT Global Series. And what makes this even worse, at the same time they were all trying to put this one man down. And what's mad about this is a lot of the time they'd send their best pros and Nick would defeat at least half of them. Still getting to a very, very respectable 27, 28 wins out of 30, which isn't top 100, but it is quite good. On top of this, the MLS pros started using this Discord to dodge each other, to give themselves more of a chance of getting in the top 100. Because, as I said, when you get to the high ranks, you normally face 1 or 2 pros a week. And if you all want to get in the top 100, you obviously can't play each other, or there'll be some losses along the way. So they'd all put in the thing when they were queuing, so they didn't play against each other. And it worked pretty successfully. There was a lot of players who were maybe Elite 2 standard at best, getting into the top 100, and then getting shown up massively at qualifiers, but EA never investigated this. The whole EMLS basically could also have been kicked out of the FUT Global Series because it is against their rules to selectively match up, or avoid matching up, against any player. While Nick pointed this out, I don't think EA were that interested and I don't think it really went anywhere. But this had the potential to blow up and maybe even be the biggest FIFA controversy of all time. As far as I know, this is completely dead now. Everyone's moved on. Nick's making his content. Everyone else is doing their own thing and I don't believe he's getting stream sniped anymore. But who knows? This might have been going on for other people as well. Perhaps in the UK, EU kind of area, people were being targeted. We will never know because the evidence isn't out there. I can't believe that they ended up getting away with it. But that point there will be our last topic for this video, guys. I know it's been a really, really long one, so I do appreciate if you've watched it all the way through, especially because it's something I haven't done before, but I'm hoping you learned some new stuff and found it interesting. So once again, thank you for watching. I really hope you learned something new from this video, and hopefully I'll see you soon for another one. Goodbye.